supports the amendment of the chair of the Arlington Tourism and Economic Development on the consultation. I think it's, I'm sure they would have anyway, but I think it's a good phrase to put into it, and you know, we have no problem with that. I would ask you to oppose the amendment of Mr. Berkowitz, though, to increase, I think, already a reasonably generous $20,000 to increase that to $40,000. The committee didn't ask for it. It's not needed to meet the goals. This committee has done its homework. It's been meeting regularly for the past year. I'm very happy that Ms. Rose, after her distinguished service on the Selectmen, is staying active in town government. You have a two-page letter where she went out and got a voluntary, from her many professional contacts, got an estimate of how much this is all going to cost, and then fitted in a few more dollars. So this is a carefully laid out plan for the $20,000. If there was an emergency, say next fall, and they were short by $2,000, there's always, or some such amount of money, there's always the reserve fund of the Finance Committee that they could go to. So there is backup in case something unforeseen happens. But basically, they've very carefully done their homework. They've come up with an estimate of about $16,500. They added another $3,500 in for contingency and other things. The Finance Committee thought they made an excellent presentation, and I believe it was unanimous, voted to support the work of this committee. If the committee needs more money next year, then they could come back next year with another warrant article that I'm sure the Finance Committee and the town meeting will give due consideration. But it makes no sense right now to give this committee, which has worked so hard and developed a very good plan, to just give them another $20,000 sort of off the top because it might be nice. That does not make any sense. So I ask you to support the Arlington Tourism and Economic Development Committee in their original motion and their plan, and vote no action on the addition of an extra $20,000 into this fund. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Loreti.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Chris Loreti, Precinct 7. I have a number of questions. First, Mr. Moderator, have you ruled on whether Mr. Berkowitz's amendment is within the original scope of the article, or the scope of the original article? Since the article spoke specifically about signage and was limited to 4 particular sites, I'm wondering how it can be expanded in scope. And even Mr. Berkowitz said he was expanding the scope.
Promotional, informational, other directional signage, take any action there too. Yeah, the article does specifically speak to $20,000 though. The sum 20 be raised in general taxes. Are you asking me to make a ruling on scope, or you just wondering if I thought about it?
Yes, I had emailed you earlier in the week and didn't see a response, so could you make that ruling now?
It does specifically say $20,000.
But my issue isn't so much the amount of the funding, it's the nature of the material that is being
I guess you don't want me to give a ruling.
What's that?
I was about to give a ruling. You cut me off.
Sorry. Excuse me.
Do you want me to? I'm sorry. I'm going to rule it out of scope because it specifically says 20.
What's that?
I say I rule it out of scope because it specifically says 20 in the warrant article. That's not what you thought I'd say, was it? Huh?
No, that's not my question, but your ruling's fine. I'm fine with that. It wasn't the way I was asking it. Anyway, some other questions. I'm curious just about what the nature of these signs will be and where they will be located.
Ms. Rowe, do you know where you're going to put your signs?
One of the reasons we are proposing hiring a graphic designer is that they are much better at where to locate signs so that they're visible, where to locate signs and what height and what material to use. That's the point of this whole exercise. I did take Andrew Baresi into Lexington that has a sign program with maroon and white letters that's very simple. I think it's a design process. It's one of those things. Obviously, most of it would be on Massachusetts Avenue. That would be the idea. And there would be, one of the things that the Old Schwab Mill has trouble with is it's not on Massachusetts Avenue. And at the juncture of the road that leads to the Old Schwab Mill, that would obviously be a place for signage. But we didn't feel that we were the experts at this. It was the graphic designer that we would hire that would suggest what the materials were, where the signage should go, and that kind of thing. That's what the $20,000 will do. It's a design process.
But will the signs, will any of them be expected to be at the sites themselves?
Not necessarily, because most of the sites themselves, the Dallin Museum is in the process of putting together a new sign program for their museum. If you've noticed, their sign is it's got scratches in it. It's not very welcoming, and they're putting together their own signage. The Jason Russell House also is looking at their signage because it's a very hard sign to read if you're in a car and you're going by quickly. The Old Schwab Mill has sort of a picture board that they put out occasionally when they're having programs. So they will have, at their particular place, and I assume that Uncle Sam will also have their own signage for their particular historic resource. But the idea is that as a town, especially at the entrance of the scenic byway, which is going to be Massachusetts Avenue and Route 16, that we begin a process where, say we decided we're going to use Lexington signs. They have these maroon and white ones. So you set an idea of what the historic sign is going to look like. Then you're going to see it again in front of or near the Dallin Museum. Then you're going to see it again near the Uncle Sam statue. Then you're going to see it again at the Jason Russell House. Then you're going to see it again at the Old Schwab Mill turnoff. That's the kind of thing that we're thinking.
Thank you. I guess I'm also wondering just what this $20,000 covers, because the proposal is only for design work, yet if you read the vote of the Finance Committee, it looks like they're expecting that amount to actually cover the acquisition and the placement of the signs. So is this $20,000 just for the first step, or is it going to get signs installed?
Mr. Rowe?
It's mostly for the design work itself. The idea is to have a sign program that can be expanded in future years. So we will be thinking of all the entrances of Arlington, all the different historic resources, the Armenian Cultural Center, that kind of thing. And then we do have the $3,000 in addition to the design proposal. Now that's just one person's estimate of what the design proposal is. The manufacturing of signs is actually a lot less expensive than the design of the signs. That's something that I found in my work of 31 years, that it's the thinking about how the sign looks and where it goes and what it says that's much more complicated than the actual construction and installation of the signs. We do not expect that this amount of money will get all the signage that we anticipate in the first year. No, it does not.
Thank you. Mr. Moderator, I'm wondering, has the Finance Committee ever recommended that the town spend money on signage for nonprofit entities or for-profit entities before?
I have no idea.
Can anyone
Mr.
on the
Tosti,
Finance
can you ever
Committee
remember?
answer that?
Trying to remember what I had for breakfast this morning. I don't remember one way or the other. Over the years, I don't remember.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you. I guess, Ms. Moderator, one case I can remember is the redevelopment board did have a small amount of money that it used for a sign design program for various for-profit entities, stores and restaurants and that sort of thing. But that money came specifically from the Community Development Block Grant program, and it came under that program because it fell under the rubric of economic development. I find it rather troubling that we're starting a precedent of spending money, which right now is just for the design for some nonprofit entities, when simply because we have a lot of money in the town this year because we've had an override and have a lot of extra cash on hand. I'm going to oppose this and suggest that the proponents come back and try to get seed funding through the Community Development Block Grant Program. If indeed some of these entities in town are struggling that much, I really wonder whether the town should be spending money on them. So I'm going to vote against this. It's not to say anything about the entities themselves, but I think we need to draw the distinction between town properties and nonprofit entities, and I think we don't do that clearly enough in this town. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Rowe, do you have any idea whether the town spent money on nonprofits?
No, sir.
Okay. I think that's your, yeah. Mr. Berkowitz, please come forward.
Question for the Bill Berkowitz, Precinct 8. Question for the moderator regarding the dollar amount as being outside the scope. I'm not just thinking of this particular amendment, but I guess I am questioning whether you, the moderator, feel that any change in a dollar amount of a recommended appropriation would be outside the scope. That seems different from my understanding.
Mr. Berkowitz, I'm looking at your amendment and the actual warrant article itself. Remember, the warrant is to warn the residents of the town what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
This warrant article is very specific. It says the appropriate a sum of money for the acquisition and placement of promotional information and directional signage relative to 4 historic sites in the town. It names the 4 sites and it says the sum, $20,000 to be amended, to be raised. Your warrant article, though I don't disagree with it, raises it to $40,000. That's the first issue. So right there, the citizens of the town have not been warned that we're going to spend $40,000 on this. They've also not been warned that we are now also going to expand the scope for other materials designed to encourage visitation and tourism in the town. That's the second issue. Specifically including but not limited to the 4 historic sites. So I see three separate matters within your amendment that would
I won't dwell on this, but
the citizens would not have been warned about.
I would just wonder whether any amendment made on the floor of the town that the citizens of the town would not have been warned in advance that the amendment or substitute.
Most spending articles and appropriations do not conclude a specific dollar amount in the warrant. They just say the town will raise a sum of money, and that sum is left blank, so or take any action there too. So the sum is left open. It's just that in this specific warrant article, they put a dollar figure.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that, Mr. Berkowitz. Mr. McCory.
Hugh McCory, Precinct 20, and also a member of the Uncle Sam Committee. I'm actually rising not as a member of the Uncle Sam Committee, I'm just rising as a town meeting member. I support the intent of Mr. Berkowitz's substitute motion, although I have some concerns about that size of the sum. I also support the substitute motion that has been presented. My concern is the transparency of how this money is going to be spent. Is it phased? Well, we briefly heard from one of the previous speakers that it's basically for design. I think that needs to be made clear if there's another person who has a chance to speak to that. How actually how it's going to be phased out. If it's purely design and what we have at the end of spending $20,000, is it just a set of prints, which may be what it costs? I'm not aware, so I'm not saying that's invalid. I just wanted to be reassured of that. I also want to speak to a point of the committee, the ATED committee, which one of the previous speakers mentioned was a fledgling committee. I actually went a week after this town meeting started and spoke to the chair of that committee, mentioning that there'd been no minutes posted for a year. Now, this committee meets once a month And myself and another member from the Uncle Sam Committee have actually tried to attend these meetings. On occasion, they've actually had no quorum and have not turned up. We have tried to reach out. Correspondence has been sent, not returned. So eventually, on May 1st, some minutes from last year were posted. So I think 2 sets of minutes for 2011 and 3 sets for this year. I would request that committee, it's in everyone's interest to be more transparent. It will help involvement. I think it's great that the intent of the article. I attended the Battle of Lexington reenactment this year in April at 6 a.m. and it was very impressive. There were thousands of people there at 6 a.m. in the morning. It was great to see. I wanted to thank also the Patriots Day, the committee who are the body of the group who organises the Patriots Day parade. I think they did a great job. As always, as my grandmother said, there's always room for improvement. And I think if we work together and in a more transparent way, that could be good for Arlington. And I think it's good for everyone. So that's all I have, and thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Mr. Rowe, what purpose do you rise?
Point of personal privilege, Angela.
Wait, we don't do that anymore. ATED committee is a public committee, and it's on the website and all of that good stuff, right? Yeah, so they can find out when it is. But we don't do personal privilege anymore. There's no real thing on the town meeting time for it.
But the statement about not posting minutes is not correct.
Okay. He
So
stands
how
corrected.
do we do that?
You're wrong, Mr. McCory. They
Thank
post
you.
their minutes. Nope. Next speaker,
Thank
Mr. Jameson. No, Mr. Jameson has the floor.
Jameson, Precinct 12. I move to terminate debate on this article and all matters before us.
Mr. McCory, there's no personal privilege. They say they post them. We can. Mr. He'll bring it up during the break on the computer and see if they're there. That's it. Come on, dude. All in favor of termination of debate, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? No. Debate is terminated. We have before us the 2 things, the recommended vote of the FinCom and Ms. Olszewski's amendment to that vote that would insert the words, in consultation with the 4 organizations related to the site, after the words Old Schwam Mill. We're going to vote on that first. I think it's in there. All in favor of Ms. Olszewski's amendment, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? No. It is amended. We have now before us a recommended vote as amended. All in favor, please say yes. Yes. Opposed? No. It is a positive vote.